Bueno, hi, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Andrea from Meow Ediciones. Thank you, Printed Matter, for the space. We are really excited and happy because we are going to have this amazing reading about Feminazis, which is a text that it's our first book inside our what we hope it will be a really vast catalog of feminist books. Miau Ediciones, it is a spin-off of Gato Negro Ediciones. We are based right in Mexico City. It is quite like sunny or not. The weather is really weird. Thank you, Nayeli. I want to present to Nayeli. Nayeli Garcia right now has become a really good friend and a really good collaborator in all of this. And then we have this amazing guest, Sio Guerrero. She's a really, really great philosopher. And we have a Julie Neuhauser, which is an amazing translator. And I'm really happy that you both agree to help us to read this amazing text. Well, I believe it is later you will tell us what do you think about the text. Feminazis, it's a text that Paul Preciado published almost 1.5 years ago in this Parisian newspaper called La Liberación. And this text came to us through a friend, Joanna Gaide. And when we did the first translation, like we believed like it was like amazing. So then we reached to Paul Preciado, and he gladly agreed to have this text published both in English and Spanish. We have been working in this text since last year. I don't know, time flies. It's amazing and terrifying at the same time. I want to show you some like mock-ups of the book because right now it is being binding. It's almost ready. So I'm gonna share you some of these mock-ups really quick. So we're gonna have like different covers in English and Spanish, and then I don't know. I'm super bad at presenting things, so I think I'm gonna pass the mic to Nayeli, and then to Sio and Julie. Thank you so much for being here.
So thank you, Andrea, and for making this presentation a little bit mixed up. I'm going to speak in Spanish for a little while. Entonces, tenemos 4 portadas aquí del libro. Cada portada tiene un diseño original que Andrea hizo y además están intervenidas con un poco de pintura en spray. La idea es que el libro sea queremos que el libro sea para ustedes una herramienta de trabajo, una herramienta de reflexión. Es un formato pequeño que es fácil de transportar. Como van a ver más adelante, la organización del texto en el papel es muy generosa. O sea, hay pocas palabras en cada hoja, de forma que se pueda prestar como una lectura de corrido, pero también a una lectura poética, una lectura juguetona, y pueda ser discutido, ¿no? Tiene estas pausas que también abren espacio para la discusión. Paul Preciado publicó el texto originalmente en francés y nosotras lo estamos presentando acá en inglés y en español. Creemos que es un momento histórico importante para hablar del término de feminazis y de otros términos, ¿no? que habitan las discusiones en torno al feminismo y que de alguna manera nos invitan a pensar de una o de otra forma la realidad que estamos luchando por cambiar. Yeah.
And actually, before we continue with the readings, I want to highlight an story about how Nayeli and I met, because I think it really connects with the whole, with the power of perception and how language can shape the realities and also the violences that we can live through. So before COVID in February, I guess, almost 1 year ago, a friend that Nayeli and I have in common present us, and then because at that time we were starting with the editorial project, and and he told me like, you should meet Nayeli because she's really like a great person. She's really talented and she's super feminist, and she is like the master of the word. You know, she can
I have to
like
say,
write amazing texts. Uh-huh.
I have to say that this friend is a male friend and he's a medievalist. He's a specialist in English literature for, yeah, like 12th century. So he is something else. I mean, it was very surprising that he
Yeah,
produces.
that he was the link between us, and yeah, that was weird, but he's like a cool guy. And then I reached Nayeli, and we met in this really cool outdoors restaurant in Colonia Narvarte. And I was really excited because, as I said, it was like the first collaborator, or the first like person that I could rely on to try to shape the project itself. Because at that point, I just had the idea, but we didn't have like any kind of project to work on. And then I arrived to this restaurant, and Nayeli was, I mean, her face was like this. And I was like, what happened? And she started to speak really quietly, like, we have to leave. And I was like, but I just arrived. I mean, nice to meet you. Hi. And then she was like, no, we have to leave because these guys over here, they are talking terrible, terrible things against women. I mean, like, you should listen. And so I just sit down, and then I just listen. And these guys were like really, really talking about harming girls, women, you know, like at that time in Mexico, also we have to speak about this. Uh, Months ago, we started to have a lot of manifestations which involve a lot of, how can you say this, like spray paintings in monuments, you know, like trying to engage with the public space and more what the government calls and the press calls violence ways or manners. But so I don't know, there is a lot of bad propaganda, or like, how do you say, like, como dices, como mediatización, como, yeah, you know, like bad propaganda against the movement. And they use these public manifestations as a way to harming and to control the public discourse against feminisms. And then, well, these guys start to talk about, yeah, I mean, the government is stupid because the thing is that they should like shoot women's in the legs, you know, they should start to be more you know, like put some order here. And but I mean, the things that they were saying, it was insane.
Yeah.
So I got really mad, like super powerful mad, because I mean, the restaurant was crowded, and no one, like literally no one,
No
like
one was
no one
listening, these
did
guys.
nothing.
Yeah. But
Yeah, because
ellos eran,
they were yelling.
eran como 8 tipos cuarentones, gordos, o sea, como grandes, corpulentos, con la mesa llena de cervezas, diciendo, sí, yo le
Ajá.
rompería las rodillas a una feminista, a ver si así entienden que esas no son formas. Con que le rompas las rodillas a una, las demás van a entender. Y yo estaba
Mhm.
realmente asustada de que estos tipos estuvieran hablando de esa forma y de que nadie en el restaurante pareciera estar incómodo, ¿no? Ni incómoda. Y entonces se lo conté a Andrea y Andrea reaccionó de una forma espectacular.
So I got really mad because I had this problem, like I have no self control at all. And then I just talked first with the manager of the restaurant, and the manager did nothing. I mean, we're like, oh, I didn't notice. I'm gonna try
I'm
to fix it.
sorry
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that
yeah. Do you
bothers
want some
you.
coffee?
Yeah.
Like, do you want some coffee, or like in the meantime? And he was like, what the hell? And so I just stand up, and then I told Nayeli, like, please, like, hold my hand, like, come with me. And then I just started like, I'm gonna say this in Spanish. It was like, buenas tardes, se la están pasando bien, son asquerosos. And then like all the table stood like
Was
this, all
quiet
these guys.
all of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, what? And it was like, you are disgusting. What you're saying is disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. Like, yeah, like I just started to rant in this,
Do you
I
know
don't know,
any
like even
women? Is there
polite
any women in your
manner.
life?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and all of you, I mean, the rest of the restaurant is like, there's people here, there's women here. Like, what the hell? But I was like shaking, you know, like ah. And so after that, we obviously decided to go away, and we
One
had
of
this
these
close
guys
meeting
start to
in
laugh.
Miguel's apartment.
Do you
Ah, yeah,
remember,
they start
Andrea?
also.
One guy,
Yeah,
uno de
they
los
start,
tipos empezó a reírse de lo que ella decía. Y entonces
yeah.
yo solo empecé a repetir las últimas palabras de Andrea como les debería dar vergüenza, mucha vergüenza, mucha. Y nos fuimos,
Sí,
pero estábamos temblando. Yo la verdad tenía miedo de que se levantaran y pues, nos pusieran una mínimo una cachetada ahí o algo, porque además no estaban borrachos, perdidos, pero sí estaban entonados por el alcohol.
you know, they had the pack of wolves, you know,
Yeah.
these things about companionship, and which is ridiculous and so dangerous. And I think that was a really like a call of destiny. I don't know another way of calling that, but I think this is one of the most, you know, the most easy or more, how can you say this, like no so dangerous example of the things that perception and the use of the language and the communication can do. And I think it really engaged with these public perceptions about how can you diminish a movement which is so long and there's so much engaged in it. I mean, human lives with the use of one word that can destroy it and also can harm a lot. And yeah, fin. That's the story about, I mean, the way we started to meet each other. And then
So we were like high. Toda esa noche estuvimos como en drogas, así hablando apasionadamente del tema, nos abrazamos, dijimos como, güey, sí, o sea, lo que tú propongas, ahí voy a estar, y lo que yo proponga, aquí vas a estar. Y fue un gran comienzo de hermandad y pues de ver que igual una sola decir que no está difícil, pero si agarras de la mano a tu amiga, puedes decirlo con más fuerza. Eso fue para mí
yeah, you can
muy, muy importante. Y también esa noche nos llevó a decidir que nosotras íbamos a abrazar a mujeres que respetamos y que admiramos en este proyecto, ¿no? Cerca de nosotras. Y bueno, eso nos lleva hasta el día de hoy, en el que Shio y Julie aceptaron venir con nosotras, las abrazamos, las celebramos, estamos muy contentas de que se sumen de esta manera al proyecto y de que podamos compartir y generar esa fuerza y esos lazos que hay en esta especie de hermandad o de, sí, de camaradería, no sé, como de complicidad, ¿no? Entre nosotras. Ese fue el principio.
and also like ¿cómo dices pertinencia? The urgency, you know, of
Yeah.
building also feminist spaces in the editorial space. Well, in Mexico, I know right now there's a lot of projects and a lot of things that are helping with visibility, and then also are building discourse. But I think it's never enough. We have a really big historical gap, which has been not covered yet, and that is also, I mean, the first interest that we have in this project, to be a space and work as a tool to you know to be used by all these discourses and all these voices that right now are really urgent to listen. So thank you so much for being here. I don't know if we should go reading the text, or if Theo or Yuli want to share something first before we go to the readings.
We probably should read them first, leerlos primero, so the audience knows what we're talking about.
What we're talking about, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So maybe we can start with Julie reading in English. Yeah. ¿Podrías compartir el texto, Andy?
Yes, of course. Of course, my horse. My English is so beautiful. Okay, a ver.
Hey. Ever since, or so they say, language was liberated, as if we women had always been strange animals unequipped with the faculty of speech. And then suddenly we'd learn to talk, who knows why. The representatives of the old sexual regime have been nervous, so nervous that they're the ones who are now being left at a loss for words. Perhaps that's why the lords of the colonial patriarchy have turned to their book of necropolitical history for the insult they always have most readily at hand. What a curious proximity, so they can hurl it into our faces. Nazi. They call us feminazis. They say they can't get into an elevator alone with a girl anymore. What a shame, because she might be a feminazi who accuses them of rape. They say they can no longer freely exercise their refined gallantry or enjoy the vigor of virile conquest. They say the feminazis have taken over the universities, that they win all the literary awards, and that they're the ones, drunk on gender studies, who lay down the law in film and the media. Inverting the positions of hegemony and subalternity, the fathers of the techno-patriarchy grant absolute power to sexual minorities, understood here in political terms, not numerical ones. Women, trans people, fags, lesbians, and genderqueer non-binary bodies, and transfer onto them, phantasmatically, the totalitarian functions of violence that have been and remain theirs and only theirs. How is it possible to apply the adjective Nazi to the very bodies that the Nazis deemed infrahuman and indispensable? There is absolutely no justification for the use of the adjective feminazi to describe the demands for recognition as full political subjects made by women, trans people, fags, lesbians, and gender, queer, and non-binary bodies. I don't think it's worth getting caught up in the theoretical discussion. It's best and more efficient to stick to the facts. When we've raped and dismembered as many men as all of you have raped and dismembered women, homosexuals and transsexuals, simply because they're men or because their bodies or sexual practices don't correspond to what we consider submissive heterosexual masculinity, then you can call us feminazis. When we've decided in a parliament composed exclusively of women, or on the executive board of a company staffed entirely by women, that a man, by virtue of being a man, should be paid less than a woman in any job and under any circumstances, then you can call us feminazis. When you're forbidden from ejaculating outside a vagina under accusation of abortion, and when any of your sexual practices exercised beyond the heterosexual bed has been branded pathological or grotesque, then you can call us feminazis. When your legs tremble as you cross a dark street, when you fearfully fumble for your keys so you can open the door as fast as possible, when a feminine shadow at the end of an alley makes you turn on your heel and run, when the streets of every city in the world belong to us and only us, then you can call us feminazis. When schools teach only the works of Gertrude Stein, Virginia Woolf, and Joyce and Flaubert are dismissed as masculinist writers, when art museums devote a single week a year to explore the unknown works of male artists, and when historians publish a magazine every decade to discuss the role of the invisible men in history, they can accuse us of being feminazis. When all of the psychologists, psychoanalysts, and psychiatrists specialized in human sexuality are radical anti-masculinist lesbians and gather in closed-door assemblies to determine the difference between normal and pathological masculinity, when, instead of drawing on Freud and Lacan, we interpret your male sexuality according to the theories of Valery Solanas and Monique Wittig, then you can call us feminazis. When your mothers, aunts, female cousins, sisters, girlfriends, and wives are always have something to say about your clothes, your hair, or how ugly or fat or handsome or thin you are. And when they inform you of these opinions anywhere, out loud, in front of anyone, and expect you to enjoy it, then, I insist, you can call us feminazis. When we go out in groups to pay a precarious male sex worker we find half naked on the shoulder of a highway on the city outskirts, a man stripped of his right to work, a man treated as a criminal in whom a police force composed entirely of women has the right to rape and incessantly harass. Then, I insist, and only then, when we go out whoring, shelling out petty change for a clit suctioning service, then you can call us feminazis. When every single day, somewhere in the world, a boy or a young man turns up dead with his pants slashed and his penis cut off, murdered by a gang of girls the justice system will let off without a fight, then you can call us feminazis. And even if someday we do all this, if we subject you, rape you, degrade you, exotify you, and kill you, if we carry out a historical project of extermination, expropriation, and subjugation on the scale of your own, then we'll only be, in that case, just like you. Us to share the adjective Nazi with you. But in order to live up to your patriarchal political techniques, we would truly need to undergo a major exhaustive collective effort, an organized hatred, an industrialization of revenge that, in all sincerity, I can neither envision or hope for. For now, and I say this with objectivity of a scientist observing the difference between the quantity of sand in the Sahara Desert and the single grain in someone's eye, there is no comparison.
Bravo!
Hey.
Gracias. Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. And I'm going to move to the Spanish version, which Cio is going to read for us. Thank you, Cio. So I'm going to just reshare this. Okay.
Bueno, comienzo con la lectura. Desde que, según dicen, la palabra se liberó, como si las mujeres hasta ahora hubiéramos sido extraños animales, que no estábamos dotados de lenguaje y que hubiéramos aprendido a hablar de repente. Váyase a saber por qué los representantes del antiguo régimen sexual están nerviosos, tan nerviosos que ahora son ellos los que se van quedando sin palabras. Quizás por eso los señores del patriarcado colonial han decidido echar mano de su libro de historia necropolítica para arrojarnos a la cara el insulto que, qué curiosa proximidad, siempre tienen más a la mano: nazis. Dicen que somos feminazis. Dicen que ya no pueden subir solos en el ascensor con una chica. Qué pena, porque podría tratarse de una feminazi que los acuse de violación. Dicen que ya no pueden ejercer con libertad su refinada galantería ni gozar de su fuerza de conquista viril. Dicen que las feminazis han tomado las universidades que ganan los premios de literatura y que son ellas las que, borrachas de los estudios de género, hacen la ley en el cine y en los medios de comunicación. Llevando a cabo una inversión de las posiciones de hegemonía y subalternidad, los padres del tecnopatriarcado confieren poder absoluto a las minorías sexuales, entendidas aquí en términos políticos y no en número. Las mujeres, las personas trans, los maricas, las lesbianas y los cuerpos de género no binario, y les transfieren fantasmáticamente los usos totalitarios de la violencia que han sido y siguen siendo suyos y solo suyos. ¿Cómo es posible aplicar el adjetivo nazi precisamente a aquellos cuerpos que el nazismo consideraba infrahumanos y prescindibles? No hay justificación alguna que permita la utilización del adjetivo feminazi para caracterizar las demandas de reconocimiento como plenos sujetos políticos de las mujeres, las personas trans, los maricas, las lesbianas y los cuerpos de género no binario. No creo que merezca la pena perderse en una discusión teórica. Lo mejor y más eficaz es atenerse a los hechos. Cuando hayamos violado y desmembrado a la misma cantidad de hombres que ustedes han hecho con las mujeres, con los homosexuales o los transexuales, simplemente porque son hombres o porque sus cuerpos o sus prácticas sexuales no corresponden a lo que nosotras entendemos por masculinidad heterosexual sumisa, entonces podrán llamarnos feminazis. Cuando hayamos decidido en un parlamento únicamente compuesto por mujeres, en la junta directiva de una empresa integrada exclusivamente por mujeres, que a un hombre, por ser hombre, se le pague menos que a una mujer en cualquier trabajo y bajo cualquier circunstancia, entonces podrán llamarnos feminazis. Cuando se le prohíba eyacular afuera de una vagina bajo pena de acusación de aborto y cuando cualquiera de sus prácticas sexuales ejercidas fuera de la cama heterosexual sea considerada como grotesca o patológica, entonces podrán llamarnos feminazis. Cuando les tiemblen las piernas al atravesar una calle oscura, cuando busquen con miedo las llaves en el bolsillo para abrir cuanto antes la puerta, cuando una silueta femenina en el fondo de un callejón los haga darse la vuelta y correr, cuando las calles de todas las ciudades del mundo sean nuestras y solamente nuestras, entonces podrán llamarnos feminazis. Cuando los colegios enseñen solo obras de Gertrude Stein y de Virginia Woolf, mientras que Joyce y Flaubert sean escritores masculinistas. Cuando los museos de arte dediquen apenas una semana al año para explorar las obras desconocidas de los artistas masculinos. Y cuando los historiadores saquen una revista cada década para hablar del rol de los hombres invisibles en la historia, entonces podrán acusarnos de feminazis. Cuando todos los psicólogos, los psicoanalistas y los psiquiatras, expertos en sexualidad humana, sean lesbianas radicales antimasculinistas y se reúnan en asambleas cerradas para decidir la diferencia entre la masculinidad normal y la patológica. Cuando en lugar de comentar a Freud y Lacan, interpretemos su sexualidad masculina de acuerdo a las teorías de Valérie Solanas y Monique Wittig, entonces podrán llamarnos feminazis. Cuando sus madres, sus tías, sus primas, sus hermanas, sus amigas, sus novias y sus mujeres tengan siempre algo que decir con respecto a cómo van vestidos, a cómo se peinaron, a lo feos o lo gordos, lo guapos o lo delgados que están. Y cuando se los hagan saber en cualquier sitio, en voz alta, delante de cualquiera, y pretendan además que eso les agrade, entonces, insisto, podrán llamarnos feminazis. Cuando salgamos en grupo para pagarnos un trabajador sexual precario que encontremos semidesnudo en las carreteras de periferia de las ciudades, un hombre al que se le haya retirado el derecho a trabajar, al que se le considere como un criminal y que una fuerza policial compuesta únicamente por mujeres tenga derecho de violar y hostigar constantemente. Entonces, insisto, solo entonces, cuando salgamos de putos a pagarnos por unas cuantas monedas un servicio de succión de clítoris, entonces podrán llamarnos feminazis. Cuando cada día en algún lugar del mundo aparezca un niño o un joven muerto con los pantalones rajados y el pene cortado porque fue asesinado por una manada de chicas, a las que la justicia deje en libertad sin problemas, entonces podrán llamarnos feminazis. E incluso si algún día hacemos todo esto, si los sometemos, los violamos, los denigramos, los exotizamos y los matamos, si llevamos a cabo una tarea histórica de exterminio, de expropiación y de sometimiento comparable a la suya, en ese caso seremos simplemente como ustedes. Entonces, sí y solo entonces nos correspondería compartir con ustedes el adjetivo nazi. pero para estar a la altura de sus técnicas políticas patriarcales, nos harían falta realmente un considerable y exhaustivo trabajo colectivo, un odio organizado y una industrialización de la venganza que sinceramente no veo ni deseo. De momento, y esto lo digo con la objetividad con la que un científico notaría la diferencia entre la cantidad de granos de arena del desierto del Sahara y el grano de arena solitario que ha entrado en un ojo, hay bastante margen.
Wow.
Genial.
It is really strange to be like, yes, because you want to clap because the reading is really strong and powerful, but then you also are realizing that the horrible situation that is just there. And before we move on to the conversation, something that I was forgot, I didn't say it, is that the translation to the Spanish was made by Paul Preciado. He self-translated everything, and then Nayeli, she did the style correction because we changed it into, how can you say this, Nayeli, from Spanish
Yeah.
from Spain.
Yeah, to Spanish from Mexico. Yeah, we try to make the text more accessible for any reader.
Spanish
Latin
reader.
American reader, yeah.
Publishing industry.
And then Robin Myers, she was the one who translated the text into the English. And I mean, I think it's the first time that I heard the text out loud, not in my inner voice, you know. So it was really powerful and amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And I think this text is really powerful and gives a lot to think of and to talk about. And so what do you think about the text? I'm just gonna shut up, I talk a lot.
It's great that this meeting's happening around a week after Rush Limbaugh died. Rest in peace.
You probably need to explain for the general audience who
Yeah, please.
So for everyone in the US watching this, you already know, unfortunately. But for the Mexican audience, Rush Limbaugh was the guy that coined the term feminazi. And he was just all around really stand-up, wonderful guy who sang racist songs on his radio show, read out the names of gay men who died of AIDS with happy music. Just really, really great guy. And he died last week. And I think it's great that the man who brought this term into the world is finally gone. And now we can have this text. And it really has, like, that word, it's kind of an amazing word in that it really is kind of a meme in like the old sense of the word, as like a self-replicating idea that gets repeated by people who wouldn't necessarily agree with Rush Limbaugh about politics. And because in the US, people who aren't hard right don't tend to use it that much because they associate it too closely with Rush. But in the rest of the world, like people, like there's communists who use it. Like there's like people who, like once you put it out into the world, it just replicated itself and replicated itself and replicated itself.
Sobre eso, ahora sí que en español, es que esta palabra es un ejemplo clarísimo de lo que son las estrategias de la derecha para posicionar términos que de alguna manera hacen que todas las luchas que tenemos fracasen simplemente porque la gente empieza a pensar desde esas palabras como feminazi o con expresiones como ideología de género, una de las cosas que ocurre es que se colocan en el vocabulario de la gente y la gente las empieza a usar. Y esa palabra se replica, ya lo decía Julie, y nulifica todos nuestros discursos, nuestras luchas y de paso nuestras dignidades. Así que no es un accidente que un ideólogo de la derecha norteamericana como este hombre, Rush Limbaugh, que tenía un programa de radio dedicado, por supuesto, a combatir todo aquello que no le gustaba, que era básicamente todo aquello que pelea por la justicia, fuera capaz, por supuesto, de colocar este término que de alguna manera erosiona, por supuesto, la eticidad del feminismo, la búsqueda de justicia del feminismo, porque esta es una lucha de justicia, de emancipación y de ética. Y este concepto lo que hace es que pervierte todo y lo reduce como si fuera un ejercicio de fuerza, un ejercicio de imposición y un ejercicio de dominio.
Claro, claro, y además le quita poder le quita poder a la demanda de liberación que creo que tenemos en común todas las mujeres, ¿no? O sea, queremos liberarnos de las estructuras patriarcales, de los estatutos binarios, de los mandatos que se nos han hecho durante siglos y décadas y milenios casi. Entonces, creo que palabras como esta quitan el foco de la discusión. O sea, cuando uno dice necesitamos liberarnos o nuestra lucha es por la justicia, la gente podría preguntar la justicia respecto a qué o la liberación de qué. Sin embargo, palabras como feminazi rompen la capacidad de diálogo y llevan, o sea, y abren por analogía y por asociación una serie de prejuicios que distraen del punto principal que es el que nos convoca, ¿no? A luchar juntas. Y creo que el texto de Preciado muestra desde un tono irónico, siento yo, o sea, es un texto con humor, ¿no? Tiene algo de jiribilla en el momento en el que empieza a decir todas las cosas que tendríamos que hacer nosotras, las mujeres, contra los hombres para siquiera poder ser llamadas feminazis. ¿Qué les parece ese humor? Yo no sé si en el texto en inglés también está, en el español nos costó trabajo como mantenerlo de forma que fuera serio, pero se notara ese, sí, como ese humor agrio, ¿no? Ese humor ácido de por qué es absurda la palabra feminazi.
Sí, yeah, I think so. I think that the original English is, I mean, I haven't read the version in French because my French is bad. Working on that one. But yeah, I think both the English and the Spanish versions have a similar tone.
Yeah.
And English translation that Robin did is quite good. And also, one thing that I wanted to bring up here too is that not only is it a way to insult and kind of like disqualify the feminist movement, but it's also the right feels the need to be oppressed today. There was a time in history when the right was confident and they're like, okay, we have the power is good, etc. But now they actually feel the need to put forward the claim that they too are oppressed, and that's one of the motivations behind the use of this word. And like, it also makes me think of, I'm sure everyone watching this in the US will know, but in what's his name? Okay, edit this part out. I need to look up his name quick.
Right, I think it's quite important what you're saying. Because this word testifies about a struggle, right? I mean, the violent use of this word tells about we are struggling and we are making the right fumbler.
So the thing with Jordan Peterson is that he's a Canadian psychologist who became famous because he used to use the preferred pronouns of his trans and non-binary students, and then became like this media star, and then went on like this weird journey where he started eating only beef because his daughter like got him into that, but he was like clearly only doing that because he wanted to have sex with his daughter, and then he ended up in like an induced coma in Russia because of his pill addiction, and has had quite a journey. But one of the things that but the reason I mention him is that he I read this interview with him once where he talked about how he has communist propaganda all around his house. And it's not, he doesn't have communist propaganda because he's a communist, obviously, or because he simply likes the graphic style of 20th. It's also completely valid. You don't have to be a communist to like a lot of that stuff. It's well designed. But because he says it's a reminder of oppression, because he feels that just acting like a decent human being is like being asked to do that is the equivalent of being like thrown into a gulag. And he feels this intense psychological need to prove to himself that he is oppressed when he's very clearly not. And all his problems, which are a lot at this point, to be honest, were also entirely self-inflicted. But the right needs that. The right needs to
victimize
itself.
Yeah.
It's like in the US, a lot of people who compare they're using the yellow star that the Nazis used, but they write like Trump on it, because being a Trump fan is the equivalent of being a Jew in Poland in the 30s.
Yeah, it's crazy. Pero es verdad, la derecha, claro que la derecha se ha apropiado de símbolos y de gestos y de discursos que hacen parecer que la derecha está siendo víctima de una represión de su libertad de discurso, o sea, de su libertad de expresión, de su libertad de acción, cuando en realidad, pues, no, o sea, no, o sea, pero claro, usan estos símbolos y estas palabras como feminazi. Me parece muy bonita la analogía que hace Julie con el caso de Jordan Peterson, que pues es un tipo, o sea, es un personaje a analizar, ¿no? Por la cantidad de fama que ha tenido y por lo desfasados de sus discursos y lo violento de sus discursos. Pero sí, en México estoy pensando si tenemos a una figura equivalente a Jordan Peterson. Creo que afortunadamente no, pero también desafortunadamente no. Perdón, sí.
Desafortunadamente creo que sí, porque si ustedes ven lo que pasa en México con todo este movimiento en defensa, por ejemplo, del PIN parental,
claro.
todo el movimiento asociado al Frente Nacional por la Familia, ellos de hecho dicen que sus derechos como padres están siendo violados por la horrible izquierda feminista, la horrible izquierda. Bueno, de hecho seguro han escuchado el término del, ¿cómo le dicen? Que ahora es una especie de lesbomarxismo, o sea, donde han combinado todo, claro, desde el marxismo, lo LGBT, lo feminista, en un masacote que no existe, que nunca ha existido, pero que es movilizado todo el tiempo. Incluso en libros como este horrible libro el libro negro de la nueva izquierda, donde dicen en efecto que sus derechos humanos están siendo violados, ¿no? Que están viviendo una opresión, una persecución ideológica. Y esto de hecho pasa en toda América Latina, ¿no? Entonces, esta retórica sí está allí. Y antes, nada más quería añadir una cosa que me parece muy importante el texto de Paul Preciado, y es que lo que describe con tanta intensidad es lo que fue el proyecto de ingeniería social del nacionalsocialismo, que era un proyecto literal de control de cuerpos, que era un proyecto de exterminio, y lo que dice es, el feminismo no va de eso. No es un proyecto de exterminio, no es un proyecto de control de cuerpos, no es un gestión, es un proyecto de emancipación. Y ahí es donde el texto evoca una furia, un enojo de decir, a ver, basta con esta analogía espuria, porque nosotros no estamos defendiendo un proyecto de ingeniería social ni de exterminio. Este es un proyecto de emancipación. No se victimicen diciendo que la exigencia de justicia es equivalente a un proyecto de exterminio.
I would say though that you are right that there is the anti-pin parental movement and like all the terrible stuff they're doing in Aguascalientes trying to
With the abortion.
with abortion.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's been a celebrity on the level of Jordan Peterson in Canada or Agustin Laje in Argentina. There probably will be,
or Ben Zafiro in the United States.
They'll probably find a face to put to this movement soon.
Yeah, that's what I meant. There is.
I don't think there, but I don't think there's yet
But,
like
one person. Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
I was
But
thinking
sadly,
about this guy in Twitter. I cannot remember his name, but Marcel Padilla. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
he's, I think, the spokesman of the National Front for the Family. And this guy is actually very well known in Mexico. And I'm saying this in English because I think Mexicans know this, but probably Americans won't. And he's also like a small celebrity. I mean, he's not at the level of Rush Limbaugh or Jordan Peterson. But this guy actually mobilizes a lot of people. Millions of persons have walked in protests that he has organized. So I will not underestimate voices like this one.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. But ¿qué ibas a decir, Andy?
That yeah, like you were talking about these personalities, but then like going again to this general discourse, like I was thinking about, I don't know, my uncle, my teacher, you know, like someone I know, because it is so deep into the social realm. I mean, the way we live, that it's not surprised that you can also encounter this in the general speech, in the general discourse. So, I mean, maybe in Mexico it's so sad that you don't need a face for that.
Yeah.
Like a specific person, because there is a lot of struggle with that way of thinking here. I mean, it's like in everywhere. I don't know, in this general sense of oppression. And for me also, the text of Paul is really important because in this ironic way, it puts a lot of evidence that it's ridiculous. It's like, this is not a war about who is gonna kill more people, or how can we encounter new ways of fight back in this sense of war and violences. I mean, the masculinist way of you know, of winning something. And yeah, that's why personally I love this, because you can see how ridiculous it is at the end to call a person feminazi. Like, it's stupid. And then I love the way that
and it's harmful. I mean, no solo es algo tonto, sino que también hace daño, ¿no? Creo que eso lo deja claro el texto.
It has nothing to do with the actual meaning and historical purpose of the word Nazi. It's like something that we, as I don't know, as a Mexican, obviously I cannot understand, but I know that it's terrifying that you're using this combination of words. And yeah.
Y también el texto de Paul, digo, además de hacer esta crítica muy aguda al término y de ensayar el significado que tiene, mostrarlo a través de los ejemplos, etcétera, creo que también regresa la atención a nuestros cuerpos, ¿no? O sea, hay cuerpos que están siendo vulnerados y violentados y asesinados por razones de género. Y creo que esa vuelta a la autonomía del cuerpo, o ese reclamo implícito por la autonomía del cuerpo, es otro de los puntos en común que unen al movimiento feminista de tan grande manera que en esa palabra se agrede justo ese punto, ¿no? Se agrede lo de la emancipación de las mujeres, como lo que decía Shio, y se agrede también la autonomía sobre nuestros cuerpos. Y yo creo que sí, que son como los dos grandes pilares que la derecha ubica muy bien, identifica muy bien como los puntos a atacar con las disputas sobre, es decir, cada vez que promovemos una ley que nos ayude a decidir sobre nuestros cuerpos, que nos devuelva el derecho a decidir sobre la autonomía, la forma y el uso que queremos hacer de nuestros cuerpos, hay como una respuesta de derecha que quiere robarnos de nuevo esa autonomía, ¿no? Creo yo que por ahí también, no sé cómo piensen ustedes dos, el tema de la autonomía del cuerpo en el marco de la lucha feminista.
Bueno, yo lo que diría es que el texto es muy interesante porque en algún momento te dice que no va a ser un argumento, que parece que Paul está harto, así, ¿no? Así de, o sea, no te voy a argumentar nada porque ¿qué caso tendría de alguna manera hacerte un argumento cuando los hechos son tan contundentes? Y sin embargo, cuando empieza a enumerarlos, paradójicamente yo diría que sí construye un argumento, porque lo que empieza a mostrar es todos los afectos en el cuerpo, como bien dices, o sea, sí pone los cuerpos por delante en la materialidad de los daños. O sea, estos no son daños de un insulto. O sea, te está mostrando todas las formas de daño que puede recibir un cuerpo. Por supuesto, no es exhaustiva la descripción, pero te enumera varias modalidades del daño que puede recibir un cuerpo en su materialidad. Y por supuesto, el daño no se agota en la materialidad, pero lo que tú ves es lo que le pasa a un cuerpo allí donde opera un sistema que sistemáticamente lo cataloga como un cuerpo que por una u otra razón tiene menos valor. Y ahí sí creo que hay una defensa, por supuesto, de la autonomía del cuerpo, porque lo que te quita esa valoración negativa es precisamente la capacidad de que tu cuerpo lo controles tú, porque empieza a ser controlado como si fuera un objeto, una cosa a ser usada. Entonces, esta manera de quitarle al cuerpo su valor, de convertirlo en un objeto para ser usado o en un objeto fallido, lo despoja de valor. Y es una de las cosas que, por supuesto, tiene como efecto el despojar también al sujeto de su condición de sujeto, ¿no? Entonces, yo sí diría que ahí hay un argumento que ahora sí que le diría apreciado, pues tú puedes decir que no, pero ahí está un argumento. Y en ese sentido sí creo que es un texto que, a pesar de ser muy corto, es un texto muy eficaz en transmitir varias ideas, ¿no? Y sí me sorprende que yo lo leo y veo su molestia, ¿no? Así, like he's fed up with this word, with this concept, with this crazy idea that we are dealing with something that is remotely similar to Nazism.
I don't really have anything to add.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really strong, and also it's really sad because it's really, I mean, it's real. This is happening. The first time I read this, I don't know, Paul, probably he's talking about the experiences and the concept that he would have in his life, maybe, I don't know, like not in Mexico, obviously, but then I was reading this and it's just so similar, and that's so scary. When he started to talk about all these gangs of girls raping, boys and penises of, it's like this kind of insanity is happening in a lot of places today, like in this century, in this day, and this is a result of a lot of pathological ways of living, ways of dealing with humanity, and binarisms and things that are so dangerous and has caused so many harms and we have suffered so many deaths, like, and it is for me a really smart and practical and powerful way of trying to build all these context in only 64 pages. It's so strong. Mm, I don't know if we should maybe like wrap up a little bit this, or if you have something more to. I mean, I know there's a lot of conversation.
We will continue. I will just say that this is a book that you probably should buy as a gift for someone, not a book that you should buy, to have it in your house. It's a book that I think should be an invitation to think. So because it's also it's you read this really fast, as people just realize. So for me, that's also important, that you have this text that is so good, so effective, and it can work to invite someone to think and to realize what we are trying to do in like LGBT movements, in feminism, in general, in movements that are advocating for justice. So I will just add this idea that this is a book to be given to someone.
Nayeli months ago told me, when I showed her the draft of the covers, this idea with the spray painting, she told me something really beautiful. I don't know if you remember, Nayeli, that you told me that this is a token. It's something that can travel with you when you are on a march, when you are fighting. It's like a small but powerful tool to have as a token. That's something that gives you strength, and the words, and also like you can read it and then have ideas and arguments to fight back, because it's really easy to read and really powerful. And now that you told us that about the gift, yeah, I think it is. That's also the beautiful things with the books. At the end, you have a book that can become an like a ideological weapon.
Yeah.
To hit the heads of the mean people, Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like literally.
And to protect. Este libro amuleto para regalar también es una especie de protección, ¿no? Crea una aura en la que sabes y reconoces que las demandas que tienes y que la rabia que sientes tienen un lugar digno de existir, porque tienen una razón de ser. Entonces, sí, bueno, es genial que hayas dicho eso, Shio, porque justo el formato y todo lo pensamos para que pudiera ser una cosa que circule y que tenga su propio destino, ¿no? Cada ejemplar va a tener su propio camino a seguir y no lo podemos controlar, y eso es maravilloso. Pues quizás llegue a manos, con suerte, a alguna de estas personas que ha usado alguna vez esa palabra para denigrar a otra persona, y que se vea reflejado en él y tenga un chispazo de iluminación. Esa es otra cosa. Nosotras creemos que sí es posible con ciertas personas cambiar su manera de pensar, ¿no? O sea, es una grieta de esperanza. No se puede con todas las personas, no es la obligación hacerlo con todas las personas, pero sí que las palabras pueden abrir una grieta en un discurso violento. Y si esa grieta se abre, lo consideramos un triunfo, un avance.
Yes. Well, the book is going to be available probably the second week of March. You can buy the book through our mainly website, which is gatonegro.ninja. Exactly, ninja, like the ninja. And then also we have our site in the Printed Matter website is hosted there because of the fair, and you can pre-order the book. This means that you can buy it like in advance, and then probably at the end of the month we're gonna ship the book to you. It's gonna cost only $5, so I think it's really accessible. And we only have 200 copies each language, so yeah, it is special. Buy it. This is like my commercial,
Yeah.
my capitalistic commercial. but we are not doing this because of the money, obviously.
It's
So
non-profit, yeah.
it's almost non-profit.
Most publishing these days, yes.
I have to say it, yes, because I don't know. I mean, at the end, the purpose of the book is that it's gonna be good. Some people, I don't want a box of books, of powerful books behind me. It's like they have to do the work outside. So I want to thank you, all of you, for being here and help us with this really enthusiastic and hopefully a long-term project. And I wish you, all of you, a really, really good day. Thank you, Printed Matter, for the space.
Thank you, Printed Matter.
Thank you, Nayeli. Thank you, Sio. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to our big brother, Gato Negro Ediciones.
Thanks
I don't
to
know if
Robin, the translator.
thank you,
Thanks a lot.
Obviously, thanks to Paul Preciado, because of probably I have to say this in the beginning, but I just forgot because I sucks the presentations. But he was really, really engaged and really, he was really kind to work with us because
Along
we
the
don't
process, yeah.
exist. You know, I was just this strange person writing to him like, I don't have like any, I don't have nothing. It's just an idea, but I love this text and look at my books, and then can you do this? And he was like super awesome, and well, thanks to everyone.